I just want to say, as I'm sitting here listening to all these panels, what I'm realizing is, okay, we got coffee, right? We had coffee, then we had financial products. Now we have Bitcoin travel. I'm realizing, oh my God, I can almost live my whole life on Bitcoin. We're getting there. Like, we're really getting there. So Economía Bitcoin, it's a perfect name for what we're hearing over here. Now, with that said, I want to welcome the next panel. This is going to be the Bitcoin stack, energy, payments, and hardware. And welcome to the stage, Jethro Toro. He is the host of the Bitcoin Country podcast, one of the organizers of Economía Bitcoin. Darvin Otero, he is CEO of Tiankii Technology. That's right. And Jake Scanlan, welcome to the stage with Hashpower Academy. And Ronny with the Bitcoin hardware store. So big round of applause for these gentlemen over here.
One, two.
Test. Hello?
Check, check.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep, great. All right, so welcome to Economy of Bitcoin. Thank you all for joining us. We've already touched on some of the key pillars that we mentioned that are foundational to this conference. So it's community, education, entrepreneurship, and technology. And in the last panel, you saw how you can travel full-time on a Bitcoin standard. Here we're talking about the technology stack that makes Bitcoin, the Bitcoin economy possible. To quote my friend John Byrne, the technology stack is fundamental to the economic stack. It is how we flourish as a civilization, as a species, and there are a lot of different aspects of the technology that go into Bitcoin. So first of all, it is energy money. Proof of work, that is the foundation that makes it all possible. Of course, it is a payments technology, so we've got a great entrepreneur here talking about that. And then hardware is a big component of that as well. So first, we're going to go around the panel. And for each of you guys, if you could just say how you came up with the idea of what you do, just like 2-minute answer. So Darvin, how did you come up with Tiankii? What do you guys do?
Okay, hello everyone. I'm really happy to be here. And for those that are visiting us, so welcome to Bitcoin Country. So, Tiankii Technology, we have been building around 4 years. And on those 4 years, we have been very focused on supporting merchants inside Bitcoin circular economies. So, and the idea comes up because I remember I have been in tech. Yeah, I am a kind of serial tech entrepreneur. So I have a business where we do software consulting. So, but I have been, I knew about Bitcoin kind of early, but become hodler until 2017. So I was already a Salvadorian Bitcoiner. And I was so excited when the announcement was made, but at the same time, I knew that there a lot of tools will be needed. Because just, for saying something, at that point, let's say that there were, just individual, wallets or personal wallets. But onboarding a whole country, that will require more tools. So because the needs are completely different for an organization that can have multiple branches, that can have multiple users. So that's why Tiankii comes up, to bridge that gap between personal wallet and business need, I will say. Because for sure we have been talking about pillars, and education for me is key, but technology for sure, is important. So we have been building that.
Give it up for Darvin. And thank you. And we really appreciate what you guys have done with both the technology and entrepreneurship. Every single one of you here who bought a ticket, you bought it through Tiankii. Their platform makes it very easy for payments, for events, and for many other use cases as well. So thank you for that. Yep. And next up, we've got Jake, who has spent some time here in Berlin, but also his real work has been with Hashpower Academy. They got about 11,000 followers on YouTube doing highly technical education about energy, Bitcoin mining, and really making these complex topics accessible to the masses. So Jake, how did you come up with the idea? What's it been like?
I went down the rabbit hole for Bitcoin 2017 onwards, went through the mistakes that many people did of exploring all the alternative options out there and finally concluding that Bitcoin was the right way. And about 2 years ago, I have a much longer term project of how all the network connects together to support the payment side as well, but also the educational side that hardware really brings. And I started with the question, where do you start with Bitcoin? Where is the beginning of the journey to learn from? And I noticed that just about every book or material that you read related to Bitcoin starts with the history of money, which makes complete sense. It's money of the future, and that financial story is very there. But what I also noticed is that there is this energy story to Bitcoin. And I always say this, is if you open a religious book or a scientific book, it all starts with bang or let there be light. And that premise really made me think about teaching Bitcoin in a story of how it's produced, from the very types of power production that we have, take the example of solar, to the very systems that we need to stabilize, to the mining hardware side, and then always finalizing with the payments side. So not just the phrases of Bitcoin is energy money, but the actual story of how all of those components connect together, and teaching that and delving into details. And it allows a learner to get the basics of how it all connects together, and then really go in the rabbit hole with each piece because they know how it all connects together. So yeah.
Yep. Give it up for Jake. And I really appreciate that you also are bringing an entrepreneurial technology element to this, but I think it's important to start with education, so I'm glad we touched on
everything. The 99% out there that are not into Bitcoin, and then the 1% that are in Bitcoin, right? And in that, ask 100 Bitcoiners and barely 1% of them are mining, which is the production side of it. So it's a niche of a niche of a niche, and education is the only way people find their way there.
Definitely, yeah, and it's an area where we need more education. And next up, we've got my friend Ronny, co-founder of the Bitcoin hardware store. And as I said, when I had Ronny as one of the guests on the first episode of the Bitcoin Country podcast, Ronny really represents the trifecta of grassroots Bitcoin adoption because he's a Bitcoin entrepreneur, he lives in a Bitcoin circular economy, and he does a lot of Bitcoin education, including for locals in El Zonte. So Ronny, thank you for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about the hardware store, how you came up with it, what it does?
Thank you for having me, Jethro. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a while since I've been in Berlin, so thank you for dragging me all the way out here. It's great. If it wasn't for Bitcoin, I wouldn't be here. And so, quick 2-minute story. I'll go with what Jake was saying. Bitcoin, it can be very difficult, but being in El Salvador, one of the things that I learned living in El Zonte was how it can solve many issues. But how can it solve the issues if we don't have access to the hardware, if we don't have the education? And so my story is very simple, how I started the Bitcoin hardware store. I needed to know where to start. And it wasn't the exchanges, it wasn't a wallet. To me, starting with Bitcoin meant having a node, because then you actually have a vote. Then you actually can verify all of the information. So I went on my way and I looked for a node, couldn't find anything anywhere here in the country. Was being told that I should get a Raspberry Pi 4. So I went on Facebook Marketplace, looked for a Raspberry Pi 4, maybe for a couple of months before I finally found one for sale. And when I found it for sale, it was in a random town in Santa Ana. So I'm from El Salvador, but I haven't visited the entire country. And so I think I rented a car, went to the middle of Santa Ana to some random little neighborhood, and met up with a guy that I'd never met before to buy a Raspberry Pi 4. Because I wanted a node. There were only maybe 2 Raspberry Pis at the time, and interestingly enough, we met right in front of the police station, and I'll never forget this, because Bitcoin had just become legal tender. People didn't really know what it was. I get to the police station, I message him, and I'm like, hey, I'm here, and a policeman walks out, a police officer walks out, and he looks at me. He must have known I wasn't from there. I probably definitely looked lost. So he comes and he speaks to me, and I start speaking to him. I'm like, all right, great. It's a police officer. I can trust this guy, I hope. We start talking. After a few minutes, I was like, so do you have the stuff? And he just looks at me like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm here for a Raspberry Pi 4. And he's like, no, I don't know what that is. So I messaged the guy. I'm like, hey, I'm in front of the police station. Can you meet me here? Overall, it was a great experience. But I needed to solve that because I said, I can be a pretty resourceful person online, kind of like Darvin said, always been a tech savvy or tech enthusiast. And that was too difficult of a situation for your average Salvadoran to want to get on Bitcoin. So I just thought I'd solve that problem. I thought I'd solve that problem for the local community, for the people who are moving here. Like I could imagine you guys might have a blast going to some random town in El Salvador, but at the time it was 2021 and El Salvador was looking much different than it is today. So yeah, that's the origin. I was just trying to solve my own problem.
Love it. Yeah, it's the classic entrepreneurial. Give it up for Ronny. And it's the classic entrepreneurial case of solving the problem that you need solved. So I love to hear that, and it really does make it easy to access Bitcoin in El Zonte. You can just walk right into the store, you can take classes, you can buy all the Bitcoin hardware you need. And so speaking of making things easy, Darvin, that is what Tiankii does. It makes Bitcoin payments easy. So could you talk a little bit about some of the products you built, like the first ones you did, how it helps boost circular economies, the NFC cards, point of sale, all of it?
Yeah. So, yeah, we were here in El Salvador. I was clear that for sure that a lot of technology, a lot of will be needed because we need to onboard a whole country, So, and yeah, at this point, even the Lightning Network was as good as is today, and not just that, most of the wallets were like on-chain, So, and also, if you want to get like a Bitcoin business accounts, like for merchant, for receive payment in multiples, location, you need to go through like couple of players, where you can accomplish or get approved by then going through a whole KYC. So that was the first friction I say that I saw. So since we already have the wallets and we already have some customers that want to pay, so what we build is how we can make initially, for merchant easy the acceptance of Bitcoin. So what we have built is initially a merchant dashboard where they create an account and they connect their own account, because all the technology that we are creating is self-custodial, which means that you create an account in our platform and then you connect your wallet. So, but if you have just that wallet, by connecting to us, you have a whole like enterprise solution where you can have payment links, like to sell a ticket for event, POS for multiple branches. And then once the infrastructure was in place, you say, oh, okay, how we can now generate demand for those merchants. And that is where the bulk cards comes up, another way to make Bitcoin relatable money, because anyone can relate, a card with payment.
Yeah, I love how it makes it easy. Tiankii is making it easy on both the merchant side with the dashboard, with connecting self-custody wallets, and for consumers with the NFC cards. You don't even need internet access. You can just hook it up to your Lightning wallet, and you can go somewhere remote like Isla Paraya, the circular economy there, and you can just tap your card, and as long as their point of sale has internet, it just makes it so much easier for the payment experience on both sides of transactions.
This was something important because Bitcoin is for everyone, but we were realizing at that point, like 3 years ago, but why we could prevent some users, some person that because they don't have internet data, or they don't even have a smartphone, why should be excluded from the Bitcoin monetary network. So we create those tools so we can include them.
Yeah, I love that. Yep. And Jake, we've talked a good bit since you've been here in Berlin about how energy is so fundamental to Bitcoin. And actually, in the context of circular economies, you had some interesting points about how the system leaks with Bitcoin leaving, and also how there are redundant costs with energy, and how mining, integrating this into circular economies, can keep the sats from leaking. Could you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the sort of systems way of thinking about it is energy is neither created nor destroyed, whether it's in electrical and physical form or in monetary form. a circular economy really starts with the first relationship of a person willing to be paid in Bitcoin. Now, granted, there's the unit of account side and it's in a quantity of dollars, but we'll start with the fact that people are able to pay in Bitcoin here in Berlin. And then once that relationship isn't just a peer-to-peer, but a multiple groups of people, we're going to start, well, probably seeing that flow of Bitcoin in one direction and all goods and services in the opposite direction. And the goal would be to have as much people coming here transacting in Bitcoin, that's Bitcoin coming in through transaction. And the other side of it is goods and services. So people here in Bitcoin could sell goods and services and call it export it out of the town and be paid Bitcoin. So I'm just thinking of all the ways that Bitcoin comes in. But there's a third one. There's one that's missing from the minds of a lot of people, and that's creation. That is that not just having the ability to have Bitcoin come in through transaction, but through creation. If you haven't noticed, it gets very sunny here. It's very warm. And the other side of that, this morning I had a situation with a shower on a farm where 1 minute the electric heater above my head to create the water, looking at that thing going, hang on, that's the same wattage as an entire brand new Bitcoin miner. And so the situation of cold water, people need hot water, people need electricity. Electricity is quite expensive here relative to people's incomes. What if Bitcoin mining was something that we can explore here in Berlin to create Bitcoin, lower our costs, and that is Bitcoin being directly issued here in the circular economy. Combining the mining production side of Bitcoin with the highest merchant adoption area creates a circular economy that connects to the sun. I want to spend my photons in the store, basically, and that also has an amazing educational journey that I've had a few interesting students, and I'm quite humbled the other day with one of the students says he wished to grow up and be like me. I can't even put that in words yet, but yeah.
Thank you for that, Jake, and just showing people what's possible, and the fact, especially with those redundant costs. And we've seen Bitcoin mining empower towns around the world with stranded energy, helping them raise their level of prosperity in the town. So especially for remote areas that are energy rich, it is a profound concept and a very useful addition to the space. And Ronny, so he talked about bringing people to circular economies. Zonte, of course, is world famous, especially among Bitcoiners, but also surfers. So you already have a lot of people coming into Zonte. In the Bitcoin hardware store, it is a very distinctive look on one of the main entrances to the main town. So you already have people coming in, and they don't always know about Bitcoin. So what you told us a little bit about the backstory. What is the day-to-day of actually running the hardware store with all of these new people coming in with various degrees of knowledge about Bitcoin?
Great question. I get a lot of everything. People who have no idea about Bitcoin, they just heard about it, seen the price, checked out the charts, have heard that Bitcoin is legal tender here in El Salvador, but they don't necessarily know what that means. They've never made a purchase with Bitcoin. They don't understand where Bitcoin comes from. So we answer a lot of questions on a day-to-day as to the basics of what Bitcoin is, whether it's the mining side of things. One of my favorite things about the store is actually what Club Cocal talks a lot about is the reverse brain drain. The people coming to El Salvador from all different points of life, all different walks of life, everybody brings in this specialty. Everybody's an expert in something, right? We all come from somewhere. Our experiences, our education, and I've learned so much being at the Bitcoin hardware store. From a Bitcoin perspective, from a human perspective, energy, I knew nothing about Bitcoin mining before I started the Bitcoin hardware store, I gotta say, and I think I've told you that, Jake. But now it's probably my biggest curiosity in the space for exactly what you just mentioned. I'm working with a project here in Berlin where we hope to turn cold water into hot water using Bitcoin mining. And so it's one of my favorite things at the store is just all the things that I get to learn, all the different perspectives that I get to hear from people, and being able to answer people's questions about Bitcoin. Because there's a lot of false narratives out there. Bitcoin takes up all this energy in the world. and we're just, we're wasting energy. And my simple response is, well, we're not trying to be another system. We're trying to completely replace the old system because it's totally inefficient. So we can't compare apples to apples when we say Bitcoin uses all the same amount of energy that the country of Thailand does. It's like, no, that's not what we're trying to compare it to. We're trying to get rid of all the banking servers, all the credit card security fraud systems that shouldn't be in place, because Bitcoin mining does that job at a much more efficient rate. So better efficiency. So I'd say, being at the Bitcoin hardware store is a great place to come learn, which is why we do classes, which is why we have people at the store. I love it when I get to the store. I have the employees that work there and open the store. I get to the store and there's already a conversation happening outside. It's probably one of my favorite things. So come by. If you're ever in Zonte, you want to learn something about Bitcoin, or you have something you want to share, please come down to the store. Share it with our team, because we'll share it with others, share it with people who are sitting there. It's been a fantastic week of just sharing ideas and seeing what we can turn into reality here in El Salvador.
Love it. Give it up for Ronny. And to combine two of your points, so you were talking about how the fiat system is inefficient with technology. Jake, you mentioned how a lot of people enter Bitcoin from the economics, finance perspective, but really technology is what lifts people out of poverty. It's not just the system. The fiat system is not just corrupt with economic incentives, but the technology is also inefficient. But Darvin, tying back to your earlier point, it wasn't always easy onboarding people, because with new technology comes new education. So you've built some very useful tools for making it easier for people to be onboarded to Bitcoin. What sort of progress have you seen here in El Salvador over the past few years with adoption, with people learning the different tools? What more do you think is still needed? What do you think is working well to double down on?
Okay. Yeah, I think that the key will be always education, because you can have the best tools, the best technology, but if you don't reach every consumer for that technology, yeah, it won't make that impact that you are looking for. So yeah, I think that what is needed, even the president Bukele mentioned that what we need the most is more circular economies like Berlin and El Zonte. And yeah, and at this point, yeah, I think that there are more progress step by step, because initially let's say that in general it was like a top down, but now we are seeing a more grassroots movement, which is very important. And we are seeing, for example, that in my particular case, I have been living in the Bitcoin standard, I will say, last 3 years, and now for me is easier to live on Bitcoin. So yeah, we spend everything. I mean, we pay for everything in Bitcoin. And yeah, we are seeing every day new merchants that comes up, or new even applications that are making that usage of Bitcoin easier.
I love that. Yep. Give it up for Darvin. As Bitcoin proliferates through the economy, we will need more and more education, more and more solutions, like you were saying, new applications. So that's all great to hear. And then, of course, to your point about circular economies being so important, but the top-down and the grassroots, every Bitcoiner in El Salvador wants to see more circular economies. And Jake, so this ties in with some of our previous discussions. How does mining plug that hole in the system of Bitcoin leaking from the system? And in particular, how do you think mining can fit in with circular economies to elevate both the businesses that plug it in and the people actually living there participating in the circular economy?
Testing. So the first place to start, like everyone's starting right now. Hello? Energy. The first place to start is the value proposition that Bitcoin offers people right now, which is store of value. If you have something to save, you can preserve its value, and time goes on and you later consume it. And we've all experienced holding onto something that gains value. But here in Berlin, there's a lot of people that get remittance, and it's probably just about enough to cover costs. So people can accept Bitcoin, but they have to immediately go and spend it just as quickly because of all of their costs. Our costs take all of our money away. And even widen that to the scope of the entire world. Everyone wants to get paid more. And the question I ask people is, would you be happy if your costs were slashed in half? And it just allows them to explore the idea that they're trying to both, yes, make more money, but reduce their costs. And all of our costs derive from quantities of energy. You can't live, breathe, walk, fly, talk, anything without energy inputs, whether it's a person, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's just about anything. So not just adoption from the payment side, being able to take Bitcoin but as payment, but having the ability to include mining into systems, which is solar would be the best prime example here, and I'm putting it out there. I'm looking to source funding for a project that is too perfect. It's just a greenhouse with flat rails, all metal structure, waiting for a system to be built, for the hardware to be established, for the educational journey, for bringing the kids there and allowing them to physically see the whole network. But the cost reduction side to that previous point is, if we can get our costs down by including things such as producing our own energy instead of paying the government grid, the ability there is to be more sovereign, not just with our money, but with our energy. And then the second piece to that is, well, when you start producing your own power, tapping into natural abundance, you produce an excess. You may produce more power than you actually need. And that gap is Bitcoin. And converting it into Bitcoin is people being able to install a system, produce a form of money, and go and spend it in the very same place. So that's not just a circular economy of people, but a circular economy through energy as well. And it sort of takes a different dimension, but getting people's costs down, whether if it's the Bitcoin Center has 4 solar panels, heats a single miner to heat a tank of water, and they don't need it, and the water pressure goes next door. It's hot water that someone else may pay for. So it's just seeing how peer-to-peer connections can be made through physics, not just the finance side. And when they connect together, we get cost reduction in people's lives, revenue increase and holding the money, and that gap is savings. And if we can include people locally here in the savings side of Bitcoin, they're going to see the value appreciation when we have infinite energy against 21 million Bitcoin as a potential.
Well, thank you. And there really is such a deep link between Bitcoin, energy, and human flourishing. And I love what you said about how there's this project that's just waiting to happen. It's teed up perfectly for it. And we are almost out of time in this panel, so I'll give it to Ronny for our final thoughts. I feel like the Bitcoin hardware store was a similar project where it was just something that was waiting to happen, slots in perfectly to elevate the circular economy in El Zonte. So, this is Economía Bitcoin. The theme is taking the next steps with Bitcoin economies. So what do you see the role of the Bitcoin hardware store with taking the next step in the Bitcoin economy and things like it? Where do we go from here?
I mean, what the Bitcoin hardware store does is we teach best practices to people, give them the right tools, give them access to the right tools. I joke all the time, the Bitcoin hardware store really is just the Bitcoin logistics store. I just try to make things arrive as best as I can, using products that, when I first started the Bitcoin hardware store, it came from being at a conference and seeing all these amazing projects that should be here all the time, 24/7, so that people can learn what Tiankii does and how it can benefit their business and how it can benefit their life, what Hashpower Academy can do, how it can benefit your life, how it can benefit your community. And that's the role of the Bitcoin hardware store. Have best practices, teach people about Bitcoin with a long-term time preference, good incentives, and teach the community, be present in the community, because when they don't see Bitcoin, when it's just this thing, this non-tangible thing that only the rich people use, then there's no connection for them. And the Bitcoin hardware store, as symbolic as it might be to some people, it really is just a place where people can come, connect, learn about Bitcoin, get all their questions answered. And I think every community needs a Bitcoin hardware store. And that's what we're focused on for the future, is to make sure that every community that wants one, every educator that wants to have this type of space has it available in their community. Because without education, you know, I'm my first Bitcoin graduate, and I focused a lot of my time there when I first started. It's all about agency. It's all about having the right tools, the right education to make the right decisions. If you don't have those, then unfortunately we're just following, you know, we're just sheep following the herd. And that's what Bitcoin is here to help us do, is help us have agency in our own lives.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you very much, everyone. We are out of time, but I hope you can see that education actually goes hand in hand with the technology and the entrepreneurship and the community. They all tie together for the Bitcoin economy. So definitely come up and say hi to these guys. To Ronnie's point, so many people are doing amazing work at the booths. Definitely go say hi to them over there as well. And thank you guys so much.
Another, photo, guys. I'm just going to jump here. Another incredible panel. I'll tell you a story. So I used to host retreats. I brought people in to discover El Salvador. And Ronnie and the Bitcoin hardware store was where we got the most positive feedback. So Ronnie did a great job just educating people, taking their time, walking them through it, because Bitcoin, at first, can be very scary. And then Tiankii, I'll just say this. I used Tiankii yesterday for the first time to pay for our speaker's dinner, and I was impressed. So imagine getting educated on Bitcoin and then having an amazing payment experience right after. And so I think that's a powerful combination. So I do want to welcome the next panel.